Under Night In-Birth 2 is almost here, and for people like me, it's an instant buy. But some of you may be on the fence or simply just curious. So with this video, I'll be introducing the game through its mechanics and features, and hopefully that can help you make your decision on whether or not to try out the game. Just a big heads up, for some parts of this video, I'll be using footage from the first game to explain certain mechanics. The reason why is that I didn't get all the footage I needed during the open beta. But don't worry, as the core concept, despite some tweaks, has not changed in the second game. Also, I really wanted to put this out before the game's release. Come join us on launch if the game piqued your interest. Before we do start though, I want to mention that I will be focusing mostly on player versus player aspect. The main reason is that, well, it's a fighting game. The game is designed around playing other people. I assume Under Night 2 will offer single player modes, but I cannot confirm it since the open beta did not contain any. If there are any significant single player modes, I might do a follow-up video once the game releases. With that said, I'm going to start off with the character visuals and designs. A lot of characters in this game is what people lovingly describe as junibyo. For people unaware, it's Japanese slang that roughly translates to middle schooler illness or syndrome. This describes teens who believe they are special and desperately want to stand out. For example, Hyde, our main protagonist, is a high school kid who has two-toned hair, loosely worn school uniform, and unnecessary belt buckles. On top of these looks, his move names are entire sentences such as the dark lotus that blooms in the abyss. Ooh, edgy. The English translation is simply Dark Lotus, and I really feel like they missed out on the vibe by shortening it. Now, don't fret if that sounds a bit cringy, as the voice acting and presentation is very well done, so it feels like you're partaking in a shonen anime. And if that's not your cup of tea, there are plenty of characters who are joyful and sometimes even comical. One such character is Yuzuriha, who happily hums as she walks back and forth and jubilantly yells as she drops the people's elbow against unsuspecting opponents. This variety in character personality and design translates to gameplay as well. The aforementioned Yuzuriha carries an extremely long katana and slices opponent from long range with the form of the idol. Seth, who is an arch rival of Hyde, wields two daggers and has considerably shorter range, but can overwhelm the opponent with his insane aerial mobility and teleportation moves. And Batista, a sentient biological weapon, can place traps that explode while filling the screen with various beams and energy balls. Character abilities in this game absolutely do not hold back. If you look at the hitbox and properties on some of these attacks, you might be surprised on how ridiculous they seem from a modern fighting game standpoint. I feel like the design philosophy is to add a lot of very strong tools to each character and let the players figure out how to counter one another. I personally find this enjoyable because it leads to drastically different playstyles even among players who use the same character. Now, having many powerful tools may lead to people thinking that this is an offense-dominated game with ridiculous neutral, overwhelming mix-ups, and never-ending block strings. However, that is surprisingly not always the case. So let's walk through some of the game's mechanics and core concepts. First, this game is controlled through 4 buttons: A, B, C, and D. A is light attack, B is medium attack, C is heavy attack, and D is tied to various system mechanics. Majority of these attacks can be chained in any order, so the game offers immense freedom in both combos and block strings. So generally, you worry about what works better rather than what doesn't work. As for combo length, it can be anywhere between 2 to 25 actions. It's a bit longer than your typical Guilty Gear Strive Roman Castle and Street Fighter 6 Drive Rush combos, but much shorter than anything coming from a team game like Dragon Ball FighterZ, Skullgirls, or Marvel vs. Capcom. Regarding simplified inputs, there are no one-button specials like Grand Blue Fantasy Vs, and no intricate assist combo system like Street Fighter 6. So you will need to learn motion inputs and combos if you plan to get to the intermediate level and beyond. Let's now dive into the general offense and defense interactions. First, you can't block grounded attacks in the air, so going airborne is a commitment like the Street Fighter series. However, there is a universal mechanic where the player can press forward and D to do a short hop like dash regardless of being on the ground or air, so you still have options to move around. But attacks in the game have some pretty big hitboxes, so grounded footsies will most likely be the focus for a lot of characters. Second is the existence of a resource that makes this game incredibly unique: the grid. On the bottom of the screen, there is a circle with a bunch of quadrilaterals. If you do positive actions such as walking forward, your side of the bar fills up, and if you do negative actions such as backdashing or getting hit by attacks, the bar will be reduced. While all this is happening, the circle in the middle will constantly turn like a clock, and every time it hits the 12 position, the game will look at who has more bars on the grid and give that player a buff called Vorpal. In this state, the player does more damage, gets special properties on moves, gain the ability to cash out their grid to convert into special meter, and most importantly, be able to cancel their moves to extend their combos or do mix-ups. Think it like Guilty Gear's Roman Cancel or Street Fighter 6's Drive Rush Cancel, but with more benefits. It's extremely powerful and is the player's best interest to win every cycle. The nice thing about this system is that not only can you gain grid from good offense, but with also good defense. And this leads into our third mechanic, the shield. If you press D while blocking, you get this white effect. And if you successfully block a strike while in this state, you get a variety of benefits. First is that you get slightly better frame advantage. So you can do things like shield an attack that is usually positive on normal block and make it negative and go on the offense. Or you can punish an attack that is not normally punishable. Second, you get extra pushback so you can alleviate certain block string pressure and even go for a whiff punish if the opponent isn't paying attention. And lastly, you get grid. So you can patiently block and wait to win the grid cycle if the opponent is mindlessly pressuring you. This forces the attacker to constantly change their attack pattern, which usually leads to more dynamic play and thoughtful strategy. And as good as shielding is, it does also have a lot of weaknesses. First, similar to blocking, you have to shield the right direction for the right attacks. You can't just press D to nullify all high, mid, and low attacks. Second, you can't immediately switch between crouching and standing. So if an opponent mixes highs and lows, you can't just switch to cover both. And lastly, it will always lose to throws. Now, if you get countered while in shield, your side of the grid shatters and you can no longer get any benefits that revolve around it until the next cycle. This will lock you out of things like Vorpal acquisition, shielding, the short hop dash that I mentioned earlier, and some moves. So all in all, shielding is a great defensive option that gives you a lot of small advantages, but it comes with a fair risk. Now there is a lot more going under the game's hood, but going over every single mechanic and how they interact with others will probably make this video a bit too long. And that's not what I'm aiming for here. I just wanted to explain enough to give you a general idea on what to expect. Alright, let's do a short summary of the key points. 1. Characters have very unique gameplay traits and an abundance of strong tools. You can expect a variety similar to games like older Guilty Gears, BlazBlue, and Skullgirls. 2. The game does not have any good options for simple inputs. but also does not have too many complex special motions. Combo length and mechanical execution requirements reside somewhere between Guilty Gear Strive and teen games such as Marvel vs. Capcom series and Skullgirls. 3. The normal canceling system leads to very flexible combos and block strings, so there is huge room for experimentation. This leads to players doing very different things, even at higher levels. 4. System mechanics are quite complex, but offers an incredibly unique game flow of virtual tug-of-war that you probably won't find anywhere else. The design promotes both good offense and defense, along with dynamic play. With that laid out, I think this game would be something worthwhile if you dipped your toes into fighting games before. Let's say you started off with one of the current generation 2D fighting games and want something that is a bit more execution heavy and complex. This might be for you. If you're a hardcore player who likes labbing and strategizing in a game where there is depth in both character and system mechanics, this is definitely for you. But if you're a new player to the genre, it might be rough at the beginning since the game is more complex than the other contemporary titles. On top of that, the player population isn't as high, so there is a likely chance that you will run into veterans a lot more often compared to other popular games. If you're in this group and you want to try out the game, I highly recommend finding a regular playing partner that is near your skill level, or find a veteran who can guide you through the process. With that said, I'm going to end this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. You can also stop by my stream if you want to see a live explanation on how the game works. Hopefully, we'll see some of you when the game launches. Alright, until next time, have fun with fighting games.